Are you looking for a new place to hang out with your friends? Let's go along the sidelines at Sidelines Bar and Grill. Located at 154 Iriarte Road, Unit 4 and 5 in Tamuning behind Royal Bigs. Sidelines, a hidden gem with nothing but great things to offer. Great atmosphere, great food, top shelf drinks, and a great team. What are we waiting for? Let the fun begin at Sidelines Bar and Grill. Open daily from 3 p.m. to 2 a.m. See you there.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms. Now, I'm going to zero in on that phrase, the people. So who exactly do we mean when we're talking about the people? Now, if you're a long-term tailgater, you know that I really was critical of Justice Scalia's authorship of the, let's see, it's District of Columbia versus Heller decision, from which we have our current Second Amendment law. And I thought it was a terrible decision. Justice Stevens said it was the worst decision that was decided during his term on the Supreme Court. And I have to agree. I really like the result, but I'm not at all in favor of the way that Justice Scalia reached the result. Classic case of critarchy. And I've when I used to do this, when I used to criticize this case frequently, I used to say that obviously Justice Scalia was visually impaired, because when he read the Second Amendment, or if you were to send him to the eye doctor and put up an eye chart that had this language on it, a well-regulated militia, Mr. Justice Scalia would have come out blind, because obviously he skipped right over the very first phrase in the Second Amendment, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So he skipped over that, and and if you're interested in jurisprudence as opposed to the law is, when you're talking about the law, you're talking about what a statute says or what a court says a statute says, and you kind of put aside any criticism of it. You just go with it as it is recognized as the law. If you're talking jurisprudence, then you criticize such things, the draftsmanship of the statute, its purpose, whether it's necessary or not. The same thing with court decisions. And as a matter of jurisprudence, it's a terrible decision. And once again, I like the result. And as you notice every day, I recognize the result, and I think that it would be really nice if it were recognized that people do have the right to keep arms and to bear arms, which means something different. And that's one of my criticisms of Justice Scalia. He quit halfway through the job. He said, yeah, you can keep arms at home for personal defense. You really have a hard time following his own rubric of statutory construction, which is originalism, to justify that interpretation of the Second Amendment. That wasn't what people thought about guns back in the day. They wanted to have guns to defend themselves from, I'm going to say something that's horribly politically correct, so keep your verbal erasers handy. They kept guns to defend themselves from hostile Indians. Oh, boy. I'm running the risk of getting kicked right off the air here, canceled immediately. Yeah. And as time went on, from the British, not to keep in the house to defend against burglars. But that's what Justice Scalia said.
So even the homeless, the Second Amendment applies.
Well, there's an interesting dimension there. And that's kind of what I'm laying the foundation for. But good point. How could a homeless person justify keeping arms if he doesn't have a house? Now, of course, there's some really strange Supreme Court construction, or not Supreme Court, but judicial construction of what a person's home is. Maybe your home is a cardboard box out in the alley behind Ward's Tavern. and these things do come up in search and seizure cases. But yeah, you'd start out, okay, well, you got a right to keep an arm in your house for personal defense. Yeah, if you're a homeless person, Second Amendment is a dead letter for you. Okay, so there's a really interesting case that popped up in this Bearing Arms column, written by Cam Edwards, and the title of the article is Appeals Court: Illegal Aliens Not Covered by the Second Amendment. Now, your first inclination is to say, well, God damn it, those illegal aliens come over here and they get all this free stuff, and Biden just opens the gate and lets them in, and they shouldn't have the right to keep arms. Well, I'm going to show you before we're done with this article that that's not a good decision for firearms, the firearms gang that are tailgaters out there. So here's how the article goes. Does the right of the people to keep and bear arms cover people who are in this country illegally? A 3-judge panel on the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals said no on Monday, ruling against a man who had lived in the United States for almost 2 decades before he was deported after being convicted on 1 count of possession of a firearm by an illegal alien. Ignacio Jimenez Shilon, S-H-I-L-O-N, Shilon, appealed that conviction, arguing, as he had at the trial, that the federal law in question was a violation of his Second Amendment rights. The panel of judges, however, agreed with the lower court that the rule that ruled those in the country illegally don't have a right under U.S. law to keep or bear firearms. Now, you've heard me as I go through these law and order moments. Where's our law and order tag here? Yeah. So we go through these law and order moments that most of the rights that arise under the Constitution don't arise in favor of citizens. They're for persons. There are a couple of exceptions, but most of the Constitution talks about persons, not citizens. So the 11th Circuit here says, no, it's if you're in the country illegally, you got a problem, Charlie. So here's a quote. Jimenez's argument to us, quote from the decision, is straightforward. 1, even as an illegal alien, he lived in the United States for decades and was thus among, quote, the people whom the Second Amendment protects, and as a consequence, he shouldn't be punished for exercise his individual right to possess a firearm. But the inquiry isn't as mechanical as Jimenez suggests. As we will explain, being a member of the people is in quotes, to whom the Second Amendment applies as a general matter is necessary to the condition to enjoyment of the right to keep and bear arms, but is not alone sufficient. The reason is that the Second Amendment's text shows that it codified what the Heller Court called a pre-existing right. The right to keep and bear arms, and that right's particular history demonstrates that it extended, and thus extended to some categories of individuals, but not others. Accordingly, the Supreme Court put in Heller certain groups of people, even those who might be among the people, may be disqualified from possessing arms without violating the Second Amendment. Now, I don't like the sound of this at all. I don't like the sound of it. It kind of rings the Dred Scott bell just a little bit. When is a person not a person? And also, it really ties into this huge debate about the leaked decision about abortion, because this so-called right of abortion is another one of these so-called rights that is not in the Constitution, but judicially created or found, much as Scalia found the right to keep arms. Going on, illegal aliens, according to the judges, are among those certain groups of people who can be disqualified because both the law and historical precedent in this country have made it clear that, quote, aliens could not surreptitiously enter a foreign nation in violation of immigration prerogatives. Now, whoever entered the United States surreptitiously? Not anymore. Not anymore. They got big signs, hooray for Biden. Let's go, Brandon, or whatever, as they wade across, or as they drive their custom-made yachts across the Rio Grande, surreptitiously. Yeah, alien could not surreptitiously enter a foreign nation in violation of the immigration prerogatives of the sovereign and expect to receive all the rights and protections of the citizenry. Nor can they do so today. I just don't like the sound of that at all. In order to reach that decision, the panel explored several Supreme Court precedents as well as some founding era history, which they say points to the idea that the right of the people to keep and bear arms was analogous to the rights of citizens to do so. To take one example, the Federalist Papers explained that one of the bulwarks of personal liberty was the prospect of citizens with arms in their hands. If the representatives of the people were to betray their constituents, Hamilton proclaimed that it would be the natural right of citizens to thusly tumultuously rush to arms. Now that's a little bit more about what the Second Amendment is about, not keeping a pistol under your pillow in case somebody breaks into the window. The right of citizens to keep and bear arms has justly been considered as the palladium of the liberties of a republic, since it offers a strong moral check against the usurpation and arbitrary powers of rulers, and enables the people to resist and triumph over them. Yet when the Constitution was submitted for ratification, many feared the lack of an express guarantee to the right to bear arms would lead to the erosion of liberty, particularly because the new charter empowered Congress to call forth the militia and raise an army and navy. Thus, several proposals quickly emerged in the states, urging the adoption of an amendment explicitly prohibiting Congress from disarming citizens. The Complete Bill of Rights, documenting the Massachusetts proposal that Congress be barred from preventing the people of the United States who are peaceable citizens from keeping their own arms, as well as the New Hampshire proposal that Congress shall never disarm any citizen unless such are to have been in actual rebellion. Now, I got to stop here and point something out. In District of Columbia versus Heller, we're talking about a statute of the District of Columbia. We have 50 states. The District of Columbia doesn't happen to be one of them. And I got my fingers crossed that it never is one of them. So when the Bill of Rights were enacted, the Bill of Rights operated only against the national government in order to protect the states and the people in the states. It did not operate to protect the District of Columbia or the people in the District of Columbia. So all this history is kind of a, oh yeah, nice, but so what type of an undertaking. Going on, one of the most interesting aspects of this case was concerning the opinion authored by Judge Kevin Newsom, who was appointed to the 11th Circuit by Donald Trump. As UCLA law professor Eugene Volokh pointed out at Reason, Newsom took the opportunity to discuss the current use of tiered scrutiny to determine the constitutionality of laws dealing with the Second Amendment. Now, we've talked about tiered scrutiny on the show many times before. It's a little complicated. Even I got to go back and kind of check myself whenever I want to spend any time with it. But you have strict scrutiny, intermediate scrutiny, and rational state purpose. And we'll get into that into this article. Judge Newsom also adds a separate concurrence in which he questions the use of strict scrutiny, intermediate scrutiny, and similar tests both as to the Second Amendment and as to other constitutional rights, such as the First Amendment. Allowing constitutional rights to be overcome by compelling or substantial government interests, he argues, elevates the normal views of we the judges, over we the people, through an ill-defined balancing test, and to an ill-defined balancing test. And I agree 100%. This whole strict scrutiny, intermediate scrutiny thing is just another one of those fables, some judicial legerdemain, where judges make things up in order to reach the result that they really want to reach. Okay, so Newsom goes on to say it's not just that the First Amendment, strict scrutiny, intermediate scrutiny document is exhausting, although it certainly is that. It's that the doctrine is judge empowering and, I fear, freedom diluting. If we as judges conclude, as I've said we should, that the Second Amendment rights shouldn't be casually balanced away by reference to manipulable means, ends, balancing tests, we might start asking the bigger question. On what basis can we do exactly that when dealing with other equally fundamental rights? And if you think about it for a moment, the real challenge is to set up a judicial system so that the guys in black robes just don't get to go in there and favor their own personal preferences and disfavor the things they don't like. And that's the danger. And the other danger is that the judicial branch, the guys in black robes, especially the federal judges who have life tenure, they're not elected, you can never vote them out of office, if they engage in what's called critarchy. Critarchy means rule by judges. We have a democratic country here, a representative democratic country, where we elect people to make the laws. And when you have critarchy, the judges make the laws. So the more active the judge, the closer you get to critarchy. And in a sense, that's exactly what Newsom is saying here in so many words. There's a lot of, back to the article, there's a lot of speculation among Supreme Court watchers that the upcoming decision in New York State Rifle and Pistol Association will specifically reject the current tiered scrutiny approach adopted by lower courts in the wake of Heller in favor of a text, history, and tradition test, which is a whole lot better. Test that, in the words of attorney and scholar Joseph Finley, focuses on the Second Amendment's text. Now, if you focus on the Second Amendment's text, you're probably going to overrule Heller, because you got to deal with that first clause, a well-regulated militia. Focuses on the Second Amendment test using history and tradition to inform its original meaning. It sounds like Newsom thinks that a similar approach would be valuable for the First Amendment too, though it remains to be seen if SCOTUS will actually adopt that test for Second Amendment cases going forward. Well, I'm going to watch that like a hawk, and I'll keep you informed. The whole tiered scrutiny thing, strict scrutiny if you're dealing with things like race and sex, etc. You have to be able, in order for a statute to pass constitutional muster, if it implicates a constitutional right, it has to be narrowly drawn to affect an important state purpose. And the strict scrutiny is a death sentence for almost every statute that's ever tested by it. Intermediate, not so strict. Rational state purpose means that if the court looks at a statute that doesn't get into one of the suspect areas, if counsel can suggest to the judges a rational state purpose for the law that performs some sort of valuable function, it passes. Even if the folks that voted for the law never even thought of that rational purpose, it doesn't matter. So it's classic case of judicial creativity. Okay, so we got, let's see who we got waiting in the green room here. Another Mark. Let's take a short break and we'll mark the target and let Mark proceed.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY. The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts. Brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point. Now, more Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie. Spitting truth like watermelon seeds at a summer picnic. Call now, 888-TALK, 888-8255.
Okay, caller, make your mark.
Hey Bob, how you doing?
Good.
Hey, I was actually keeping track of that appeal that went through concerning the individual that's claiming right to bear arms. Yeah, they were questioning the fact that when it was brought up that he was a resident of the United States for the past 2 decades.
Well, he was in the United States. Whether or not he was a resident's another question. But go ahead, Mark.
They referred to it as a resident because he was living in the United States, but yet the lawyers could not understand or could not answer the question, why didn't he seek residency properly? So he's claiming rights as an illegal immigrant, and when the appeal fell through, is because that's one of the reasons why so many people are trying to sneak into the U.S. for our rights. You know, they don't have it in their country. They like it that's happening in the U.S., so they're sneaking in. But yet they cannot justify a claim to the rights because they snuck in. They are not citizens of the United States, which the Constitution was developed for.
Well, not actually, Mark. As I pointed out on more than one occasion, most of the Constitution goes to persons, not citizens.
Well,
So as a general principle, a person has as many civil rights in the United States as a citizen. But go on.
Right, but when you sit there and start thinking about it, they would sit there and say, okay, a person has to belong to a country, right? To avail what's available in that country. Now, the persons that are coming in illegally don't belong to the country. They would like to, but they cannot do it. They don't do it lawfully. And in order for you to be a part of the country, you have to abide by the laws. So, in essence, crossing a border illegally, which is against the law and is listed, and then to sit there and claim rights to said country after you've broken the law to get into the country is, a bit of a stretch when someone says, well, I stuck in from Mexico, I come from Honduras, and I have the right to carry a gun.
I'll tell you what, Mark, let's play law school for a minute, okay? I'll be the professor and you can be the student, okay?
All right.
Okay. So let's say that that this gentleman who's, let's see, what was his name? He had a strange name. Jimenez Shalom. Let's call him Mr. Jimenez. Let's say that Mr. Jimenez stands on a soapbox in the town square and starts shooting his mouth off, saying all kinds of unkind things about the government. And he's arrested. And he's hauled into court and he said, hey, wait a minute, you guys. The First Amendment says I got freedom of speech. The judge is going to get out his gavel and say, no, you don't have, the First Amendment doesn't protect you because you're not a citizen. Is that right, Mark?
No, the First Amendment will protect you. But in the case of the individual getting arrested, after he's being processed, he's going to be found that he was illegal.
Well, that may very well be true, but that doesn't help us with our constitutional interpretation. Let's say let's say that same guy, right? The cops grab him, and they pull him back in the back alley, and they twist his arm a little bit, figuratively and literally, and say, "Hey, you better tell us what we want to know, or we're going to cause you to be deported." Okay. Tell us, do you have a gun at your house? And the guy said, yeah. What's your address? 1014 Broken Neck Street. So the cops take that and get a warrant and go, and sure enough, there's a gun there. So when Mr. Jimenez goes to court, he moves to suppress the gun because it says it's fruit of a poisonous tree. He said he was forced during an illegal seizure to tell them where the gun was. And then the judge says, no, you can't take advantage of the Fourth Amendment because you're an alien. Is that it, Mark?
No, that one there is that scenario is so wrong in 7 different locations.
Uh-huh.
And the reason why I say that is because man writes the law. Congress writes the law. Okay, then it is enforced. But the key detriment to every law that is written is as interpreted by the reader. Now, if the police officers decide to do something stupid to coerce the individual to say something he's not supposed to say, then the police are wrong.
So,
which is against the law.
So even though the guy is an illegal alien, the Fourth Amendment protects him.
Right, but how do they know if he was an illegal alien?
Doesn't make any.
This is my case, or this is my point, should I say?
Uh-huh.
All right. When I was looking at that, they're saying that he doesn't have the right to what do you call that? The Second Amendment right.
He doesn't have the right to keep and bear arms.
Right, because he was an or illegal immigrant.
Yeah, I got that, but the point I'm trying to drive home is that most of the constitutional rights don't distinguish between illegal immigrants, legal immigrants, and citizens.
Yeah, but like you said, it relates to persons.
Yeah.
Right, strictly for persons.
Yeah.
But if you look at that and think deeper, it's the persons of the United States.
Well, and that's
at least that's how I was taught to reference that meaning.
Well,
the Constitution was written for the people of the United States.
That pretty much gets you back to Dred Scott. because the Dred Scott case, if you're familiar with the Dred Scott case, said that when the Constitution was drafted for the people, it did not include slaves or anyone of the Negro race. That's what Dred Scott said. They are not the people, therefore the Constitution didn't apply. Therefore, when Dred Scott went to Minnesota, he did not become free because he wasn't one of the people. And that's why I started out with this saying I've got some problems with this case. Once we start making these distinctions,
I mean, you're looking backwards at history.
That's the only way you can see history. You can't see it looking forward.
You can only see where we're at right now if you look at where we've been. But like they say that, and I tend to believe this, the Constitution is a living document.
Oh.
Mainly, hang on, hear me out of this. Mainly because when the Constitution was written, how many times has an amendment been included?
Well, that's not what you mean when you're talking about a living document.
That in essence is what I mean.
Okay, well, you want to be real careful about using the phrase "living Constitution," because that's Mark. That's what the lefties use by saying, we can't be stuck on what they did a couple hundred years ago. We have to interpret it in context of modern times. Therefore, judges can go pretty much wherever they want to with it. It's a bad doctrine.
Right, but what I'm saying is, I'm not saying that it's a living. What do you call it? What would you say? What do you call it? Whatever. When I say a living document, all right, I look at it, if it was tried and true and had everything on it from the very beginning, there would be no amendments.
Well, the first 10 amendments, Mark, the first 10 amendments were added in 1791. The Constitution was ratified in 1789. So for practical purposes, when you were interpreting the Bill of Rights, you interpret it as part and parcel of the Constitution as written, because it was the compromise that allowed for ratification by the states.
Right, and if you're looking at it, how many amendments are there now?
26.
Right, so you went from 10, was it 3 or 4 years after it was written, to the first ratification?
2 years.
2 years, and here we are, 270, 280 years later?
Yeah, it's let's see, it's not, it's, let me just check here, 27. The last one was 1992. Yeah, but that...
Okay, and now they're trying to put together a continent, what do you call that, a Continental Congress, to make ratifications on term limits. Which, in order to do that, you need a certain amount of states.
You need three quarters of the states have to ratify.
Right, so they've been trying to do that for the past 15 years. And when I say it's a living document, that's what I meant.
Okay.
It can be amended down the line.
You just want to be really careful with that phrase, because
I understand.
Any conservative is going to go through the roof when he hears the word living document. But go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, I understand. But when you then you look at the the Supreme Court is fun to watch and very educational. All right. When I looked at this Roe v. Wade thing, and you're talking about nowhere in the Constitution does it declare that abortion is a right. It isn't. It hasn't. They can't find it. But in some people's minds, it is a constitutional right, even though it's not listed. But what's really surprising me from the left is that they're shifting this from the federal level to the states. That's all the opinion is saying. The federal government does not want to be the maintainer of Roe v. Wade. They want that to go back to the states because it's closer to the people. The people are not closer to the federal government. They're closer to their state government, which means every state will determine their issue with Roe v. Wade. Say, And that's the left is crying out now. They had some people say that next thing you know, they're going to go after gay marriages.
Well,
Gay
and
marriage is
their fears are well founded, because this whole gay marriage thing is another case of judicial creativity. They just made it up out of whole cloth, and if Roe fell, the same reasoning that would take down Roe would take down gay marriage. Now,
right, but the gay marriage is not listed on the federal side. A lot of the states took it away from the federal by declaring that yes, they are for gay marriage.
Do you know how many states actually went the gay marriage route? One, Massachusetts. Everywhere else, it was the court that imposed it on the states. Crytarchy at its best.
Right, I believe you're right on that. But that question has come up in the voter side. It's always been put up. Now the citizens of the different states have different views on it. But like I said, just like the gun rights for people, this is the people's decision for their states. My opinion, the people of the state decide.
Well, if that were the case, then nobody in New York would be able to own a gun. And in the District of Columbia, you couldn't own a pistol. That was what Heller was all about.
Yeah, but the difference between that and the gay marriage or the abortion thing is the Second Amendment, which is a God-given right to bear arms. So, according to the way I read it. So, if we're talking Constitution, we talk Constitution. We talk amendments to the Constitution, which comes, which is formulated with the Bill of Rights. Now, a lot of people going out there and saying this and that and every other thing, it's all either they want it to be there, even though it isn't, or the way they interpret it, it should be there, but it isn't. See, there's nothing in the Constitution. I mean, there's a lot of people right now saying this, that, and every other thing that they feel that should be part of the Constitution, but it's not. Well, and the only way to do that is to get a continental put together a continental Congress so they can request for amendments to be made to the Constitution.
You see, Mark, an awful lot of people don't have the ability to listen to tall tales, so they wind up being very misinformed about what the Constitution does, and more importantly, what it doesn't do. I have hypothesized a test that many people use when they are evaluating a Supreme Court or a lower court decision or even a statute, and it's what I call the alimentary test. Not elementary, but alimentary test. So if the court makes a decision and it makes your tummy warm, it's a good decision. But if the court makes a decision and it tightens up your anal sphincter, it's a bad decision.
I like that analogy.
Good talking to you, Mark. You're a good student.
All right. Hey, buddy, you take care.
I'm glad you're enrolled in the Tall Tales class. Talk to you later.
All right.
Yeah, that guy made his mark.
I guarantee you that was an audience interactive moment you just did. Everybody raise your hand.
Yeah. Okay, next subject here for the class. I guess I ought to go to Demi and Courtney. I enrolled Mark in law school, and, there was a movie once upon a time called The Paper Chase. Ryan O'Neal, and I can't remember who the female was. Pretty good, fairly realistic, but law school is just different from any other kind of school you go to. because the professor never tells you anything. He doesn't tell you the answers. The professor asks you questions. So what you have to do is you have to read a few cases, maybe a half dozen cases to be prepared for class. You come to the class and the professors, most of whom, really enjoyed putting people on the spot and embarrassing the hell out of them. And first-year law students made it really easy for them to do that. So the professor says, Klitzkie, brief Brower's Board of Education. So I would stand up and give a short précis of what the case was about, the reasoning, the holding, etc. And then he'd say, well, suppose that the court found that the facilities for the different races were, in fact, equal, although they were separate. That would have meant that Brown would have lost, right? So the professor just keeps asking you questions after questions after questions, changing the facts, rotating things around, keeping you on your toes. And if you stay with it long enough, you'll be able to figure out how to do that yourself, to do that kind of reasoning process. And the method is called the Socratic method. It was invented by this old-time Greek, a fellow named Socrates. And it's still a very valuable way to learn things. I just mentioned one more thing. In the first week of law school, you learn that the two most important words in your vocabulary are if and however. If you think you really know something and you're really sure of it, you're probably wrong. Because if you think you know something, the first thing you say is, well, yeah, but if. Okay, so much for that. Mark was a good law student. I'm going to keep him in the class. He's going to get a passing grade this time around. And now we've got another Joe who I guess wants to be a law student. Okay, another Joe. Tell you what I want you to do. I want you to brief the case of, let's see here. Where did I put that? Yeah, I want you to brief the case, the Ignacio Jimenez Chalon case. Go ahead, another Joe.
I think that,
Saved by the bell, another Joe. We got to take a break, so try to study your notes. We'll get after you right after the break, okay?
Okay.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus tenactac, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Half a day. Patsy Gogri from Security Title here with information about what a title company does. The title side of our business determines who owns a property and guarantees your ownership with a title insurance policy. The escrow side acts as an independent third party, managing the transfer of money and documents between the buyer, seller, lenders, and others. Security Title has the management of real estate closings down to a science. Give us a call. We are here to help.
Okay, so here we are, short break. We got about 10 more minutes to the big halftime show. Another Joe will probably use all of that 10 minutes with one of his long elucidating explanation of the rule in the Jimenez case. So go ahead, another Joe.
I have to admit, Uncle Bob, I am not up to the task about the shooter, Jimenez.
Okay.
I'm not up to the task. I apologize.
Give it your best shot. Another Joe. Beep beep. Best shot.
I am tongue-tied and with stage fright. I cannot comment on that. The reason I called is because I was asking, was that the Continental? Was the previous caller talking about a Continental Congress?
Well, he was using Continental Congress, but what he meant was Constitutional Convention.
Constitutional Convention.
There are two ways that the United States Constitution can be amended. If 2/3 of the members of each house vote to amend the Constitution, and then you send it out for ratification to the states, and 3/4 of the states ratify, the Constitution is amended. Instead of involving the Congress, you could have constitutional conventions in 2/3 of the states. It hasn't been done, but it is part of the process. It was done for the first 10 constitutional conventions.
Constitutional Convention.
Yeah.
And is it possible that all these illegal migrants would somehow benefit the Liberal Democrat side in the Constitutional Convention?
Well, the membership in a constitutional convention would be a matter of state law. So if the states in forming their constitutional conventions said, yeah, we'll let anybody in, aliens illegally in the United States, citizens, sojourners, whatever, that would be the way it would go. The chances of that happening don't even rise to the level of slim and none, of course, another Joe.
Okay, Uncle Bob, that answers my question. Thank you much. I'll just keep listening. And I'll look at the Jimenez thing. Thank you.
All right. Good question.
I'm searching my brain. I can't remember. I did a rewind. So if they ruled against the illegal alien from enjoying the Second Amendment rights, does that also apply to temporary citizens, work visas, people residents there? Is it just a matter of residency, or is it a matter of citizenship?
Well, it's against the criminal law of the United States to enter the United States improperly. And I think that's the hook that they hung it on.
Criminality of the status.
Yeah. So I think if you were a tourist landing at Kennedy Airport and you walked out to your buddy's car and your buddy had a gun in the car and you took the gun and did something with it, maybe the Second Amendment might apply. Maybe not.
Now, because, as far as immigration laws, once you cross the border and you're an illegal immigrant, is there a judgment rendered on you automatically, or do you still have to go through the process of going to court to say you're an illegal immigrant?
Yeah, a lot depends, because one of the things that the United States does is they'll round up people in San Isidro or Juarez or Nogales or someplace like that. They'll toss them in the pokey overnight and take them back the next morning and just turn them loose. And of course, with this president, instead of doing that, they give him a room in a really nice hotel, load him on an airplane, and take him. Cell phone. Yeah, give him a cell phone, take him to Wisconsin or someplace like that. Then they turn him loose. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I was wondering if he said it's because it's illegal to be here and it's a criminal, but he hasn't been convicted. You see my thread?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. Now, there aren't that many prosecutions for that unless another crime is involved. If that illegal alien is engaged in a robbery or something like that, you'd probably indict him for all of those things if it arises under federal law.
And so my final statement is, what do gun control people have against illegal immigrants?
Well, I promised that I would tell you why I think this is not a good decision. And of course, your immediate reaction is, oh, good. Oh, damn illegal aliens, they shouldn't have the same rights as we do. But here's why it's a bad decision. If you remember what the rationale was, if a person breaks a law of the United States, then that person is not one of the people. And the Congress has the ability, and even Scalia said this in his decision, he said that doesn't mean it's an open, unfettered right. It can be qualified for reasons of A, B, and C. So my fear is this, some hard left Democrat's going to read that and say, what we need to do is we need an act of Congress. We need an act of Congress that we use a really sharp pencil on, and we figure out some way to pass a law that will give us a leg up on the Second Amendment, because we can cite to the Jimenez case. If you violate the law, then so for our purposes, if you really are a gun buff, an anti-gun control type, you would want it to read that any person, the Second Amendment will apply to any person. And that's kind of the way the law works. You know, sometimes, as I've mentioned before, most of these things are not like watching a cow piss on a flat rock. You can't watch it for 10 seconds and know everything about it. So the alternatives here, to me, are kind of grim. That I wouldn't want to give anybody in Congress the idea that a properly worded federal law could impact on whatever rights there are under the Second Amendment. And of course, we don't know yet what the right to bear arms is. We know that under Heller versus D.C. and McDonald versus Chicago, a person has the right to keep a firearm in his house for personal protection. And this New York case that's before the case right now will probably tell us what we can do with respect to bearing arms. Now, I was watching a little TV this morning, and I heard this impassioned plea from Joe Biden, and he mentioned God. He must have used the word God 25 times in his speech. What in God's name? And, you know.
Who do you think he was, the vice president?
Yeah, kind of like trying to act like he's a Catholic or something like that, you know, using the word God. So this latest mass shooting, of course, is going to cause all of the gun control folks to come crawling out of the gun. We got to do something about that. And of course, Joe says we got to get rid of assault weapons. That's the solution. We've got to get rid of assault weapons. And I wished I'd have saved it, but I had an article here about a year ago that talked in terms of mass shootings and how few there were even 20, 25 years ago and how many there are now. And asked the question, what's different? Well, the number of guns is about the same. We've always had an awful lot of guns in the United States. More people, same number of guns. But some of the things that have changed, we've become very hostile to religion in the United States. The number of people who are actually enrolled in or practicing an organized religion is probably half what it was 25 years ago. Almost all of the shooters are males. All of them at the time came from families that did not have fathers. And of course, we've worked pretty hard on setting that up, you know, with the Great Society, where having a father in the house was cost you money, and then the whole femlib thing to sort of castrate the males of the species, figuratively and literally. So that was another one of the things that had happened. Some of the things that we've done in our schools. So this whole idea, well, we got to pick up all the assault. We got to have good gun control. If you had if you had a law, if you could do this overnight, having any gun in the United States was contraband and could be confiscated by any federal or local officer. If you could do that and get around the constitutional challenges, how long would it take to pick up all the guns? You couldn't do it. It would take forever. All right, let's break for the big halftime show.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Second deadliest school shooting in U.S. history. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. Happened midday Tuesday when a gunman walked into an elementary school in Uvalde, Texas, and started shooting. 19 students, 2 teachers killed. Several law enforcement officers were wounded when they engaged the shooter, who was then killed by a tactical unit from Border Patrol.
We have FBI, multiple law enforcement agencies on scene working together to try to identify how the suspect was able to obtain this rifle, and also Most importantly, to see what kind of motives the suspect had.
Lieutenant Chris Oliveras of the Texas Department of Public Safety. President Biden, who had just returned from his Asian trip, reacting.
I am sick and tired of it. We have to act. And don't tell me we can't have an impact on this carnage.
The president also asked for prayers for the families and ordered American flags lowered to half-staff. Former President Trump's endorsement in Tuesday's Georgia's governor's race falling well short.
As Democrat Stacey Abrams waited without opposition, the dogfight between former Senator David Perdue and Governor Brian Kemp never materialized. Kemp won easily on primary night and set his sights on the Democrat.
If Stacey Abrams was ever governor of this state, Georgia would be just one COVID variant away from lockdown, government mandates, schools shuttered, and businesses closed.
Despite the contentiousness of the GOP primary, Kemp said Perdue pledged his help to keep Abrams from being elected.
Fox's Gernal Scott. Herschel Walker easily winning the GOP Senate primary in Georgia to face Democrat Raphael Warnock in the midterms. In Alabama, there'll be a runoff next month as Katie Britt failed to win 50% of the vote. She'll have to face Congressman Mo Brooks a second time to determine who will face Democrat Will Boyd in November. America is listening to Fox News.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to nactac, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
The Federal Reserve is starting to increase interest rates to fight inflation, but they're still so low, making it the perfect time to refinance your home, to lower your rate, and perhaps take advantage of its increased value to put some cash in your pocket during these uncertain times. Cash that you can have the freedom to access when you want, where you want, with your Bank Pacific Visa debit card. Lower your rate with cash in your pocket. Access your cash when you want, where you want, with your Visa debit card. Where others put branches, we place roots, and we're rooting for you. Equal housing lender, credit conditions apply.
They waited until President Biden had left the area, but North Korea has launched more missile tests.
South Korean military officials say North Korea has fired 3 ballistic missiles towards the sea in an easterly direction. Japan's Coast Guard says a projectile believed to be a missile has fallen, and this comes less than 24 hours after President Joe Biden wrapped up his Asia trip, highlighting America's security commitment to Seoul and Tokyo. North Korea has conducted a number of ballistic missile tests this year. The United States believes that a North Korean missile launch on May 4th was a failed intercontinental ballistic missile test that exploded shortly after launch. John Saucier, Fox News.
President Biden plans to sign an executive order on police reform for federal agencies today on the second anniversary of George Floyd's death. A House Energy and Commerce subcommittee will hold hearings in Washington on the baby formula shortage. FDA Commissioner Califf and representatives from 2 of the country's larger formula makers are expected to testify. The FBI says it's uncovered a plot to kill former President George Bush, saying the suspect went so far as to scout out Bush's home in Dallas. 52-year-old Shabib Ahmed Shahib, an Iraqi citizen living in Columbus, Ohio, reportedly affiliated with ISIS, has been arrested. And there's been an arrest in Sunday's apparently random murder aboard a New York City subway train.
Police taking Andrew Abdullah into custody hours after authorities posted his name and picture on social media. Police say witnesses reported the 25-year-old paced back and forth in a train car Sunday morning before he approached Daniel Enriquez and shot him at point-blank range.
His repeat offenses were not enough to keep him off our streets.
Police Commissioner Keishant Sewell says Enriquez would still be alive were it not for New York's bail reform law.
In the only state in our nation where a judge is not allowed to consider dangerousness when setting bail, this was yet another failure of that system.
The shooting coming weeks after a man opened fire on a crowded train, striking 10 people.
Fox's Steve Rappaport. And I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Half a day. Patsy Gogri from Security Title here with information about what a title company does. The title side of our business determines who owns a property and guarantees your ownership with a title insurance policy. The escrow side acts as an independent third party, managing the transfer of money and documents between the buyer, seller, lenders, and others. Security Title has a management of real estate closings down to a science. Give us a call. We are here to help.
Everyone has a busy schedule these days, and sometimes we forget to schedule our routine dental checkup and cleaning. Don't neglect your dental health. Schedule one today with Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile Team, conveniently located at the East West Business Center on Marine Drive, Upper Tumon. Call us today at 647-8702 or 3. Again, that's 647-8702 or 647-8703. We make smiles happen.
Subway's Eat Fresh Refresh does it again, bringing back a classic fan favorite on the menu. The roast beef returns. And not just any roast beef, it's choice Angus roast beef, flavorful and satisfying on its own, or layered with oven-roasted turkey and Black Forest ham in the Subway Club. Whether you're a choice Angus roast beef purist or like the variety of the Subway Club, both come piled high on hearty multi-grain bread with fresh hand-sliced veggies. Get your fill of the new roast beef at Subway. Eat fresh.
Another great halftime show here on Tall Tales, one that we enjoy so much. So we had a pretty good spirited conversation here about the Second Amendment, gun control, etc. And I'd be more than willing to continue. And I got a really thin card today, and this is an interesting subject. And over the break, Jose reminded me of something that I think we need to take into consideration on this idea: what's different now? What has happened in the last 30 or so years? We've always had a whole passel of guns in this country. It's nothing new. We've had guns for a long, long time, but we didn't have these mass shootings. And I wished I'd hung on to this article that describes some of the differences, but things like most of these shooters are strange kids who've been living without fathers. We've pretty much debunked religion in the United States. Our schools are no longer the palaces of learning that they used to be. Our schools have fallen down a lot. And Jose reminded me of something else, and that is that since 1972 or 3. 1972, we have taken 62 million infants in the womb. 63 million infants in the womb, chopped them up and pulled them out of their mother's bodies. And of course, this has gotten a lot of press. And the longer it's gone on, the more press we get, and the more the pro-vendors of abortion are at it, the more they want to brag about it. So if you're in a situation like in New York State passed this really loose abortion law, just about abortion right up to the time of birth. And after it passed the New York legislature, they were so happy that they lit the state capitol up in pink as a matter of celebration. So, the pro-abortionists, hey, we're so happy, we've got a good abortion law, and, you can't interfere with our rights, and it's impossible to separate our choice of whether and when to have children from every other choice in our lives. So forget about the women's autonomy and on and on and on. This has got to have some effect on society. When a society, major figures in a society, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, the President of the United States, come out and say it's okay to kill a helpless, innocent child in the womb, then what is the general attitude about killing people going to be?
Do we have to shape a suction machine and forceps into a rifle? for them to understand what's happening.
Exactly. Yeah. If you required that suction machines and forceps could only be sold by licensed firearms dealers.
Call them assault forceps.
Yeah, something like that. But, that's where we are in this country. It's all right to kill a helpless, innocent baby in the womb. But it's, because if you got a good reason, it's all right to do it. Then you take these kids that have lived in these fatherless homes, misguided kids, lost souls, etc., who are able to get a hold of a firearm and wreak havoc with it. And then we say, well, these gun we've got to do something about these gun manufacturers. We've got to do something about these assault rifles.
Bonnie Suba just put on Facebook right now. She's absolutely correct. Human life has been devalued at the moment of conception. So we can't be gnashing our teeth over what happens to our children when we've already devalued them in the womb.
Exactly. You can't have it both ways. If you want to go along with the Vanessa Williams approach, then whether you like it or not, whether you want it or not, you're stuck with the whole package. And that's exactly where we are right now. Okay, as far as gun control, as I mentioned at the end of the show, I think it's a fool's errand. There are so many guns in the United States. Had we been like a country like, say, Japan, where they'd never had a firearms history, then maybe you could say no guns. But there are probably more guns floating around in the United States than there are people. And as I hypothesized at the end of the first half, if you could pass a statute that said all guns are contraband, get around the Constitution, all guns are contraband, must be surrendered to federal law enforcement forthwith, and that federal and local law enforcement can go out and search and do whatever they need to do to take all of that contraband off the streets. Could you do it? No, you couldn't do it. So that possibility is just not there. But I'm going to be a little partisan here. The Democrats never think in terms of coming up with something that'll be successful. They don't ordinarily think in terms of analyzing a problem to see what the problem is. When they see the symptoms of a problem, homelessness as an example, prime example, there are people living out on the streets. Well, the problem is homelessness. Let's come up with a program. Let's develop an agency. Let's put the people in homes, and then we will have solved the problem. So they come up with a solution before they even analyze the problem. So they take drug addicts and crazy people off the street and put them in rooms or homes or something like that, and then you got a building full of drug addicts and crazy people doing the same thing they did on the street.
Well, we had such an experiment in Mighty.
Yeah.
It didn't last too long.
Yeah, that's right.
Unfortunately, there was families involved too, but it didn't last long at all.
Not long, yeah. So that's the Democrat solution to the problem. But the Democrat, when that happens, brags about it. You know that program that you had to take people off the street and put them in SRO hotels, et cetera? It just didn't work at all, did it? What do you think about that? Well, we tried. So no matter what the problem is, don't analyze it. Come up with a solution. Spend a lot of money on it. When it doesn't work, take a victory lap because, by God, you tried. Yeah, and that's the Joe Biden approach. Or the New York approach. Let's put the firearms manufacturers out of business. Let's ban assault weapons, on and on and on. It's not going to change a thing. Okay, anybody else want to talk about gun control or any related subjects? I'm going to go into Zemi-Ekotny, such as it is today. Now, you'll recall that Zemi Cotton is at part of the program where I examine the editorials of each of our daily newspapers, go through them with my blue pencil, point out the errors, incorrect English usage, flawed theories, whatever, and when I'm done, evaluate the two and award the better of the two the coveted blue star, taking into consideration that the blue star never goes by default. And even if there's only one editorial, it has to meet the high standards of Tall Tales in order to achieve a blue star. That's not what happened today. Of course, the Post is still on the editorial boardroom. The Post is still on strike. They're not doing editorials anymore. And here's the Daily News's red-hot offering. Our view. Buckle up for safety, Guam. It's that time of the year when the Department of Public Works Office of Highway Safety is collaborating with local law enforcement agencies to encourage all motorists and passengers to click it or ticket as part of an annual seatbelt safety awareness campaign. And let's take a short break here. Sure.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
We're already Pika's best radio station, but we're always looking for ways to be even better. Announcing The Point on Alexa. In addition to our FM and HD radio feeds, our incredible app, informative website, Facebook Live, and YouTube Live, you can now tell Alexa to stream The Point. And your smart speaker will start playing whatever we're saying. News and views 24/7 with your 4-word command. Alexa, stream The Point.
Hey there, folks. It's me, KFC's Extra Crispy Colonel. My KFC Extra Crispy Chicken is freshly double-breaded and fried to a luxurious, mouth-watering bronze. You see, Extra Crispy KFC Chicken isn't just a product, it's a lifestyle.
And for a limited time, KFC's delicious egg tarts are back. Pick up your KFC Extra Crispy Chicken meal and an order of egg tarts at your favorite KFC today. KFC, it's finger-licking good.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
Okay. Yeah, this I was reading this editorial, and it was just such dynamite that I had to take a short break there to kind of control my thoughts. But, you know, sometimes they write really, really hard-hitting editorials like this one. Buckle up for safety, Guam. And they spent a page and a half telling you to buckle your seatbelt when you're in a car. Wow, I'd have never thought of that in a million years.
Well, I hope nobody's reading it while they're driving.
Now, you younger folks wouldn't remember this, but when I first started driving, cars didn't come with seatbelts. No, there were no seatbelts. And in the 50s, especially the late 50s, hot rodding became very popular. And it was the beginning of the era of drag racing. So if you wanted to enter your car in a drag race, it had to have a seatbelt. So very few kids' cars had seatbelts. You know, we're driving around, like my first car was a 1949 Mercury. You probably thought it was a Model T, Jose. Yeah, it was like the one that, like the blue 49 Mercury that James Dean drove in Rebel Without a Cause, if you can remember that. No seatbelts, no, none of this safety equipment. But it became kind of a cachet back in those days to actually pay to have a seatbelt in your car. That was cool because that meant, hey, that guy's ready for the drags. So when we finally got around, you know, when the law was finally enacted, once again our national government somehow figured that they could get in the front seat of your car and tell you to wear a seatbelt. You know, you had to wear seatbelts, and my solution to it was every time I got in the car, I put on the seatbelt, even if I wasn't going to go anywhere. So you do that for a week or 10 days, and it becomes a habit. You don't need to think about it. I can't imagine myself being in a car and not having a seatbelt fastened. And I've been in foreign countries where cars don't have seatbelts, and I just feel really uncomfortable. I'm not scared. It just seems so strange to be driving down the highway without a seatbelt on. So that's my solution to buckling up. But I'm kind of a big boy now, and I don't think I really need a lot of schooling on that. So here's the daily news now. Buckle up for safety.
You know, kind of halfway down in this editorial, you find out why they wrote it. But I'll let you start it.
The Centers for Disease Control, is that the part?
Further down.
Here on Guam alone?
That paragraph.
Yeah, 16 lives were lost on Guam in 2021 due to automobile-related accidents. 6 of these fatalities involved passengers who were not wearing seat belts, Governor Leon Guerrero said in a news release. Yeah, the governor's really hot on seatbelts.
Yeah,
right?
I don't know the connection, but they interjected her name, and there you go.
Yeah, our governor, she really cares about us. She wants us to buckle our seatbelts. Well, I don't know the statistics, but I suspect a lot of those 16 lives were lost because the drivers got into races with concrete power poles. And I have yet to see the race where the concrete power pole won. The car winds up a wreck at the foot of the power pole. So, you know, to me, this fastening of the seat belts is basic. You don't need the newspaper to tell you to fasten your seat belt. And if you're dumb enough to be driving along without your seat belt and you get a ticket, great. But let's see, today it's fastening seat belts. Now, I happen to see a preview of tomorrow's editorial, and it's something like, good health depends on brushing your teeth before you hit the sack. Brush your teeth every night. Yeah. And be careful when you're crossing the street. Make sure you look both ways before you cross the street. And never, no matter how much you're in a hurry, don't jaywalk. And I wouldn't be surprised if a phone rings and it's the editor of the Daily News calling me up to write editorials for him with a dynamite material like that.
You just gave him a whole week, Bob.
I did, yeah. You know, you could just go down the list, right? Don't let little children play in the street. There's a good one for you.
Remove the spoon that you stirred your coffee with before putting the mug to your mouth.
Don't play with fire.
Mm-hmm.
Don't let little kids play with matches. Yeah. Coming on the Daily News here.
Don't leave the potato salad out for more than 1 hour.
Yeah. Let's see. No. Not even close. Not even close. Okay, I got to work on the card next. Here's what I got on the card. I got Paul Zerzan versus systemic racism. I've got anti-colonialism versus abortion. Now, if that doesn't work, nothing will work, Jose. The silver bullet. And let's see. That's just about all I've got for today. I say it's a really thin card. So let's go to Wrigley Field for the 7th inning stretch. Okay, so here we are back in the air again after that short break in Wrigley Field for the 7th inning stretch. And I'm just going to look at Facebook here for a second. Jose Ted Pago, that's a hot car, Bob. Yeah, well, my 1949 Mercury, dual exhausts. Yeah, seat belts. Fender skirts. Fender skirts were big back in the day. Most kids probably don't even know what fender skirts are. Yeah, I had some special hubcaps. I can't remember where I got them. And of course, since I was only 16 when I got it, I had ball tires. It was faster in the drag strip, right? Okay, systemic racism. Here's what the rice looks like when we're talking systemic racism. Everybody has seen this platters like these at fiestas. And Paul Zerzan, who led that group of counter-protesters when Hove Cristobal went to the Black Lives Matter rally, Paul Zerzan wrote a letter to the Daily News saying that, hey guys, that rice is not red, it's orange. You know, we kind of look silly calling something that's orange red rice. Well, the Daily News wouldn't stand for that. So Therese Padua Howe, who is one of the editors of the Daily News, comes back with a column that's headlined like this: Readers to Zerzan, leave our red rice alone. The majority vehemently rejected the proposal, such as Cecile's Chargalov's comment on the Post 671 Guam recipe. Why change traditions? It's like, here we go again, being invaded and changing what is naturally ours to what they think it should be because they don't like it. I don't care if it's not the color they're liking or it's not dark enough for them. Just leave what is a traditional thing to be just that. Tradition. So we saw silencing. You know, Paul Zerzan comes out and says, I looked at it. How dare you? Yeah, Paul Zerzan looks at it and he says, you guys call that red? It's orange. And And Therese Howe was able to go out and find some people who rose up in righteous resignation, righteous indignation. How dare you say that? Leave our red rice alone. So I don't much care what color the rice is. I'll have a couple spoonfuls of it whenever I go to the fiesta. I can't say that, it's my favorite dish, but it's just kind of what you do, right? It's kind of traditional. Have a little bit of red rice. But this was a classic example of the facts versus the narrative. And that's why I keep coming back to it. Because so much of what we see nowadays, that Herman and Henry have a right to get married, and they should be able to get married just like Herman and Henrietta, who have 3 children. And, if Herman decided he wanted to be a female, well, all he's got to do is really decide, and he could be a female. And that when you have a girls' rugby match, a high school girls' rugby match, there's nothing at all wrong with a 6-foot-tall male who who grinds the girls up playing with the girls' rugby if he says he's transgender. That's the narrative. That's the narrative. That's the how dare you talk about our traditions. The facts are the truth, that the rice is really orange. And that's why I keep coming back to this, because hardly a day goes by that I don't get into a story where I have to point out, you see, here we go again. The rice is really orange, but these folks over here are telling you it's red. It takes a man and a woman to get married. You can invent all kinds of tricks and sophistry and everything like that, and you can say, yeah, a man can marry a man, but that's the narrative. That's the red rice. The fact is that it takes a man and a woman to get married. That's the orange rice. That's why I keep this on the calendar, just to remind myself and everybody else what we're dealing with here. And that's why I call it systemic racism, because this whole critical race theory, it's systemic racism. The reason that like 75% of the players in the National Basketball Association are black, it's a matter of systemic racism. I think I explained that to you before, Jose. Do you know why that is? Why 75% of the NBA players are black?
Why is that?
Because of systemic racism, they can't figure out any other way to make about $1 million a year playing a game that I used to play when I was a kid for free.
How dare they?
It's the only, because that's the only opportunity they got. Systemic racism. Okay, so as usual on the card here, I'm going to go through the notices of meetings and commissions in today's paper, pointing out who screwed up again. Career Tech High Academy Charter School. Anybody know anything about Career Tech High Charter School? I hope they're better at teaching kids than they are at putting notices in the paper, because the current law, Public Law 36-34, requires that the law has been on the books for quite some time. A notice of a public meeting of a board or commission must have a 7-day notice and a 2-day notice. And for about the last year, that notice had to include the agenda of the meeting, and the items in the agenda had to be descriptive enough as to put the public on notice as to what was going to be discussed. And if the agenda didn't meet that criterion, then any action taken at that meeting was void. Now, I keep seeing the Career Tech High Academy Charter School coming up all the time. They're setting the record for void meetings, because their agendas are textbook examples of exactly how not to do it. Here's how it goes. Career Tech High Academy Charter School, Inc. will hold a board meeting on Wednesday, June 1 at 4:30 p.m. via Zoom. There's a meeting ID and a passcode. Agenda 1, call to order. 2, approval of minutes. 3, unfinished business. Well, like what unfinished business? Doesn't tell you. Violation. New business. Okay, what new business? Doesn't tell you. Violation. Executive session. For what reason? Doesn't tell you. Another violation. So whatever you guys do at that meeting, Career Tech High Academy, Academy Charter School, it doesn't count. It's void. I would think that if you want to be in the school business, you remember the 3 R's, reading, writing, and arithmetic? You ought to concentrate on the first 2 of the 3 R's, reading and writing. Read the law and write your agendas in accordance with the law. Okay, and then I've got the agenda that the legislature published. And Therese Terlahi, the speaker, and Tina Rose Munga Barnes apparently just can't get this right because they've got several items on their agenda, including potential items for the agenda. Bills number 197, 242, 261, 266, 281, 297, and 301. Well, that doesn't really put me on notice as to what's to be discussed, because I know how the procedure operates. In order to be placed, for the Rules Committee to place a bill on the agenda, the committee report must lie before the Rules Committee. There's a signature sheet on the committee report, and members of that committee have the ability to mark pass, do not pass, report out only. And unless a majority of the members of the committee vote report out only or pass, the bill can't go on the agenda. If, let's say, there are 10 members on the committee and 7 of them mark do not pass, it can't go on the agenda. If 5 of them mark pass and 1 of them marks report out only, that's 6 out of 10, it can go on the agenda. It doesn't have to, but it can. Now, we've seen stories in the paper the other day with this potential items that only 2 members had signed the committee report and they wanted to put it on as a potential item. Can't do that, folks. Now, you guys passed 36-34. One would think that you would know how it works and would set a good example by scrupulously complying with it, but you don't, which says to me that you all ought to be turned out, at least the folks, the leadership of the legislature, and we really need to give some serious consideration to a part-time legislature, to people who really care about what they're doing and don't just go through the motions with BS, like potential items for the agenda. Okay, let's see. Probably got Therese Terlahi on the phone here. Let me just check my stack and see who I got. I've got Phil. Click it for ticket. Phil wants to go back to seatbelts. Go ahead, Phil.
Sir, that survey, they said about 16 fatalities or something and 6 wearing seatbelts.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, did they do a survey when they lifted the no helmet law for motorcyclists and see how much motorcyclists died before the helmet law and after?
I don't think so, yeah.
Yeah, they should do something on that because all the cyclists that died, I think majority of them were wearing helmets. I think they have a higher ratio of fatality of not wearing helmet than the seatbelt. And, this is my opinion.
Understood, yeah.
Which we were talking at a, family gathering, and one person said, that's not fair because I ride a motorcycle, but I do wear helmet, sir.
I did too in my motorcycle riding days because my head, I was afraid of my head.
Right. And the instructor said, try taking a watermelon, hold it up by your waist and just drop it on the floor. You think it'll crack? I said, definitely it'll crack. Because imagine your head at 35 miles per hour. So I said, okay, I always wear the helmet since then.
Yeah.
So anyways, the question of debate at a family gathering was, why is it the motorcyclists get to choose, which is, that's the only safety device for a helmet for a person riding is for motorcyclists is a helmet.
I'm right with you there, Phil. And let me give you a couple of others. I'll give you a couple other examples of things that don't make any sense. You can ride a motorcycle and not wear a helmet, but you cannot wear a bicycle and not wear a helmet. If you're riding,
I know that is another crazy.
If you're riding a bicycle, you must wear a helmet. And then even worse than that is this. You can ride in the back of a pickup without a helmet, even if you're a child. Now, probably the most dangerous thing that anybody ever does, short of the armed forces, is ride in the back of a pickup truck. That is extremely dangerous, but that's okay. So when this helmet law came out, I said that this is going to be a good job for a skilled manufacturer, because a skilled manufacturer could use plastic and wood and build something around a motorcycle that looked like a truck bed. That way you wouldn't have to wear a helmet.
So anyways, going back to the family gathering, so the people that don't ride a motorcycle said, it's not fair that the motorcyclists get to choose and the operator for motor vehicle has to wear a seatbelt. It's not an option.
Right.
So I looked at it and he said, it's also safer. You got 4 wheels. You got doors, an engine in front of you, trunk behind you. You're well protected. I said, you know what? I didn't make the law, man.
Yeah.
But you're right. Growing up in the 60s, it was a lot safer to ride on the back of a truck compared to nowadays. Back then, they were driving like 25, 30 miles per hour. There was only 4 cylinders. Now there's V8 Hemi engines, 4 6-cylinders with turbocharge.
Sure.
We should adopt the law from Bali. I've been to Bali for a week. Nothing over 4-cylinder in vehicles, and as far as motorcycle, nothing over 400 cc.
Well, we'd all be a lot safer if we junked our big American cars and drove those little Japanese key cars, wouldn't we?
Yes, the one they're bringing in now.
Yeah.
So I hope the governor's listening, and maybe if she really cared about our lives on the roadways, that's something good to bring up. Get rid of all the V8 6-cylinders.
I think Government House monitors tall tales every day. They record it. They use vice stress and analyzers on it. They're fully checked up. They're not tailgaters, but by God, they pay attention. Good talking to you, Phil.
Thank you, sir.
All right. So going back to that charter school, Gene Nettie, Sir Bob, that Career Tech High School rents their school from a church. And my friend confirmed pastor of that church sits on the high school board. Is that okay? I think that's a conflict, right? I think his name is Steve McKnight or something like that. Well, I don't know what the conflict would be unless you're saying that a pastor shouldn't sit on a school board. I would, of course, whenever we're talking about anything dealing with religion, refer to the First Amendment to the United States Constitution, which says, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. So I would think that a pastor sitting on a school board, a person who's sitting on a school board and being a pastor would be the free exercise of religion. If you said that pastors can't sit on school boards, that gets into the free exercise of religion. The fact that a pastor sits on the school board doesn't make it an establishment of religion. So I really don't see what the problem would be for the pastor to sit on that board. I do see a problem with the way they put together their agendas, though. So thanks for raising that, Gene. So I got a couple of hot ones here in the green room. And our Keith has a disagreement with me. Whoa. Well, I'll tell you what, our Keith. I will always go to great lengths to protect a caller who calls in and is wrong. Yeah, no matter how wrong the caller is, I will always protect him and ensure that he has a right to express his wrong opinion here on Tall Tales. So if you want to disagree with me, you've come to a safe place. You're probably going to be wrong, but don't worry, I'll protect you. And then Johnny Utah says Biden snub Guam per Guam Republicans. Okay, we'll come back to that. But first, let's find out what our Keith wants to tell me. Go ahead, our Keith.
Hi, Bob. I find myself in the unusual situation of disagreeing with you in regards to the last call. I don't like the idea of the government in any form, shape, or capacity telling us within reasonable limits what we can drive on the road. If I want to drive a Hummer, then I should be able to drive a Hummer. 6 cylinders, 4 cylinders, 8 cylinders, or 12 cylinders, like the old Jags used to be.
No,
the real problem.
Where do you disagree with me? Where's the disagreement?
Okay. Well, I took, I guess it was Phil's comment who said something about we should be driving these tiny 4-cylinder buggies. And I thought, or I interpreted your response as agreement.
I said, I think we'd all be safer if we junked our great big cars and we were all driving those little key cars. I didn't say that the government ought to require it.
Okay.
Big difference, Keith.
We're in agreement then. We're in agreement then. No. That means we're in agreement, so our streak is still good.
Okay. All right. So I don't have to extend the protection to you that I promised you before I picked up the phone.
No, not at all. Not at all. The real problem, is that Guam needs more highway cops. I work into the early evening in downtown Hagåtña, and I live south of town. I would love nothing more, if any police is listening to me, to take you on a ride just in the few miles south of Hagåtña and watch the people going far in excess of, I would estimate, 60 miles an hour in the 35 zone. People not wearing, or people on the phone, and my personal favorite, people driving at night with no lights. And I would say the latter category is not a rarity. I typically see 2 or 3 every evening. I think the problem is not vehicles. Again, it's sort of a whole gun control argument. It's not the inanimate object, although in this case the object is indeed moving. It's the operator. Just about everyone I know who has come here for work, and even myself when I first arrived a few years ago, I think they need to make driving tests a little more stringent, and I think they need to enforce traffic laws more often.
I've got my wish list too, Keith.
Yeah?
Okay, we need to teach people what merging means.
Oh, thank God, yes.
Yeah, I come down Marine Corps Drive as I'm driving to work, and when I come to the intersection with Route 3 that goes up to GRMC, there's a perfect merging lane there. And what I see about every day is somebody who's driven all the way to the end of the merging lane has stopped and is going to need a chiropractor to straighten out his neck, because he's got his neck turned around backwards, just like the movie The Exorcist, you know.
Yeah.
And he's going to sit. He's going to sit there for hours. And then when you drive across the airport on the airport access road, you get down to Route 8, and there's an even nicer merge lane there where you just zip around. You go right. You've got a straight lane ahead of you. People turn the corner and then they stop and they're looking around.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing that people think that the lane nearest the center line of the highway is for slow traffic.
I am going to quote a T-shirt or a bumper sticker rather that I saw many, many years ago that said there is a special place in hell reserved for people who drive too slow in the passing lane.
Absolutely.
And I tend to believe that.
Absolutely. And I see it every day. Okay, Arquise, I corrected the record there. I didn't put a K beside your name on the scorecard.
Okay, very good.
All right, let's head for Churchill Downs.
Are you looking for a new place to hang out with your friends? Let's go along the sidelines at Sidelines Bar and Grill. Located at 154 Uriarte Road, Unit 4 and 5 in Tamuning behind Royal Bigs. Sidelines, a hidden gem with nothing but great things to offer. Great atmosphere, great food, top shelf drinks, and a great team. What are we waiting for? Let the fun begin at Sidelines Bar and Grill. Open daily from 3 p.m. to 2 a.m. See you there.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
Okay, Gene Nanetti comes back into the story here about the church and the school that can't put together their agenda properly. And she adds this: even if the priest runs the church that the school rents from, I mean, he gets the check. So he's the church owns the real property, the school rents from the church, the pastor sits on the school board. Well, that gets you into how is a school board chosen? Is it chosen by the parents? Or how is it chosen? Because if the parents chose him and they know what the situation is with a rent check, then it's not a conflict of interest. Okay, so we got somebody all the way from Utah calling in, part of our international radio listening audience, Johnny Utah. Go, Johnny.
Hey, Judge Bob, how are you doing?
Good.
So have you read the statement from the Republican Party of Guam regarding Joe Biden not visiting Guam?
Well, let's talk about it. Tell me what it says.
Okay, well, first of all, there's no author on it. It does have the letterhead of the Republican Party on it, May 24th. It says, President Biden avoids Governor Leon Guerrero. It was unfortunate to learn that President Joe Biden elected to skip the traditional fuel stop in Guam after his official trip to Japan and instead opted to head towards Anchorage, Alaska. This would have been a great opportunity to have a meeting with Governor Leon Guerrero and discuss issues critical to Guam while being parked on American soil and on an island which plays a vital role for the United States. This makes one question: if there is even a request from Governor Lee, they put a run-on sentence in here. They're trying to say the governor requests a meeting with the president, considering the economic crisis our island is facing with inflation. If the request was indeed denied by the White House, the question widens on why, as this makes the second such situation where the Biden administration ignored Governor Guerrero. The first being when the nation's first female Vice President Kamala Harris made a full stop in Guam and refused to meet the island's first female governor. If the plans were to completely avoid Guam, why didn't the president invite Governor Leon Guerrero to Tokyo, Japan, as he did India's prime minister and Australia's prime minister? It makes you wonder, is Guam not important for the Biden administration, or is the president avoiding Guam's governor? Former President Donald Trump made sure to meet with Eddie Calvo during his administration and discuss North Korea. George Bush stopped and met with Luis Camacho. Why is the White House ignoring Governor Leon Guerrero, a fellow Democrat? Is there something brewing that we are not aware of? Since Biden took office, Governor Leon Guerrero has taken several trips to the nation's capital and has yet to obtain a meeting with a single cabinet member of the Biden administration. This latest debacle further questions their confidence in the leadership. As for the president Biden himself, his actions today are a clear insult to the people of Guam. End of statement.
Well, here's my analysis. First of all, neither the president nor the vice president stop and spend any time here with us. We should count our blessings.
Well, yeah, because you know what?
We dodged the bullet on that one. The less time that we spend with those two knuckleheads, probably the better off for all of us. There are a lot of really important issues dealing with the governor. Coming along and saying, Governor, we've got some sour grapes here, and we want you to sample some of the sour grapes too. And if we can, we want to blame something on you. I think it's a little disingenuous. There probably is a really good reason that the president is going home via Alaska instead of Guam. As important as we know Guam is in the international geopolitical scene, there may be other considerations involved. So the Republicans, I suppose, are doing what we expect a Republican Party to do, but you won't see me standing on the sidelines leading cheers for them. How does that, Johnny?
I agree completely. I have other insight as to why it's also good that he didn't come to Guam. Just on the mere fact of his statement with being putting his cards out, showing his cards on being willing to have a military defense of Taiwan with China. The last thing you want to do is show all your targets, and Guam would be a big target. And Biden didn't go to Guam, so maybe the Chinese think, hey, you know what, Guam really isn't that important.
Well, maybe it's this. Biden really stuck his foot in his mouth on his whole defense of Taiwan statement, and the White House is trying to walk it back as fast as it probably could. So they probably figured the farther away we can keep him from China, the better off we are. Alaska is farther from China than Guam. Let's go home via Alaska.
Well, and also the Democrats are thinking that they're going to win a seat in Alaska. If I'm not mistaken, there's a House seat that they're going to try to get out of Alaska that I think they might have a chance to get.
Hey, Johnny, I got to go. Good talking to you from all the way from Utah.
Yes, sir. You guys be safe.
See you tomorrow. So long.
Okay.
Here we go. Let's go, Brandon.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
21 dead in Texas school shooting. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. The list includes 19 elementary school students and 2 adults murdered, police say, by an 18-year-old gunman at Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas.
The suspect was able to make entry into the school and started shooting children, teachers, anybody that was in his way. He started shooting every single person. We had several law enforcement officers try to make entry into the school, but they were met with gunfire by the suspect.
Lieutenant Chris Oliveris of the Texas Department of Public Safety. This third grader says he was just feet away when the gunfire started.
I was thinking like, oh shoot, he's not like kidding. He's actually not afraid to shoot someone.
The shooter identified as an 18-year-old Uvalde resident who was then killed by a member of the Border Patrol's tactical unit, which was in the area and responded to the scene. President Biden, barely an hour returned from his Asian trip last night, calling for prayers for the families.
May God bless the loss of innocent life on this sad day.
And may the Lord be near the brokenhearted and save those crushed in spirit.
But then he pivoted to a call for action.
As a nation, we have to ask, when in God's name are we going to stand up to the gun lobby? When in God's name we do what we all know in our gut needs to be done?
The president has ordered flags around the country to be lowered to half staff. Gun legislation, no doubt, will be discussed today during the confirmation hearing for the president's new choice to be the director of alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. And the president will sign an executive order today on police reform for federal agencies, banning the use of chokeholds and directing the attorney general to create a national law enforcement accountability database on this, the second anniversary of George Floyd's death. America is listening to Fox News.
Get all of your favorite Fox News podcasts ad-free on Apple Podcasts with Fox News Podcasts Plus. From Trey Gowdy, the Fox News Rundown, Will Kane, Brian Kilmeade, and so much more. Go to foxnewspodcasts.com for all the details. The Fox News Rundown, a contrast of perspectives you won't hear anywhere else. Your daily dose of news twice a day, featuring insight from top newsmakers, reporters,